She overheard her ruthless billionaire husband's cruel betrayal. She pretended to sleep. The next day, she secretly escaped with their daughter. 5 years later, their paths crossed again. "You took everything from me." Malcolm's voice was low, dangerous as he cornered Rose against the wall of the empty gallery corridor. His expensive cologne, once so familiar, now made her stomach turn. 5 years, Isla. 5 years of searching, wondering if my daughter was even alive. Rose lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated despite the hammering of her heart. "I took nothing that wasn't already mine. My child, my freedom, my life." "My child," he corrected, his gray eyes cold as steel. "And don't pretend this was about freedom. You heard one conversation, misunderstood everything, and disappeared like a thief in the night." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Misunderstood? I saw the documents, Malcolm. I heard you and Gregory planning to frame me as unstable. I read the custody strategy that would ensure I'd never see Nora again." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps. Or calculation. "You have no idea what was really happening that night." "I know exactly what was happening. You were revealing your true self." She straightened her shoulders, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the luxury surrounding them. "And now you found us. What are you going to do? Destroy everything I've built, just like you planned 5 years ago?" His hand shot out, not to grab her but to brace against the wall beside her head. "Where is she? Where is my daughter?" "Safe. Loved. Far from you and whatever game you're playing." Rose ducked under his arm, creating distance between them. "Stay away from us, Malcolm. I have nothing you want anymore." "You have everything I want," he replied, his voice suddenly hollow with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "And I will get her back, Isla. Whatever it takes." As she walked away, the weight of his stare burning into her back, Rose knew her carefully constructed new life had just begun to crumble. 5 years of hiding, of rebuilding, of creating safety for herself and her daughter, all threatened by a chance encounter at an exhibition she'd never wanted to attend. The question wasn't if Malcolm would come for them, but when. And this time, she wouldn't be able to simply disappear. Have you ever discovered that your entire life was built on a lie? That the person who vowed to love and protect you was actually your greatest threat? This is the story of Isla Morgan, a woman who fled with her daughter in the dead of night after discovering her husband's shocking betrayal, only to face him again 5 years later, more determined than ever to reclaim what she took from him. If you've ever had to choose between comfort and truth, between security and freedom, then you know the impossible decision Isla faced. Like this video and subscribe to find out how far one mother will go to protect her child from the man who once promised to love them both forever. 5 years earlier. The gallery opening buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses as Isla Morgan studied her husband across the room. Malcolm was deep in discussion with their financial backer, his charismatic smile never faltering. 5 years of marriage had taught her to see beneath that practiced charm, to recognize the subtle tells when he was being less than truthful. The slight tightening around his eyes. The way his right hand occasionally brushed his watch. But tonight, something felt different, the way he kept checking his phone, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't just Malcolm's usual business mode. This was something else entirely. "Isla, darling, the Westons are asking about your Sierra series." Vanessa, the gallery owner, touched her elbow lightly. "They're serious collectors. Could be a significant sale." "Of course." Isla smiled, the professional mask slipping easily into place despite her unease. "I'll be right over." Before moving toward the potential buyers, she caught Malcolm's eye across the room, raising her glass slightly in his direction. He returned the gesture, his smile warming momentarily before Gregory leaned closer, reclaiming his attention. Gregory Price. Malcolm's business partner and closest friend. A man whose calculating stare had always made Isla's skin crawl, though she'd done her best to hide it for Malcolm's sake. Tonight, something in the intensity of their conversation, the secretive glances, sent a chill through her despite the crowded room. "I'm stepping outside for a moment," she whispered to a colleague before slipping toward the quiet balcony. The cool night air was a relief after the stuffy gallery. 5 years of building her photography career had culminated in this showcase, yet Malcolm seemed distracted rather than proud. The cityscape of Seattle spread before her, lights twinkling against the night sky. This should have been her moment of triumph. After years of struggling to be taken seriously, of fighting to prove herself as more than just Malcolm Thornton's wife, her work was finally receiving recognition on its own merits. The landscape series capturing the raw, untamed beauty of the Pacific Northwest had resonated with critics and collectors alike. Her phone vibrated in her clutch, a text from her sister, "Call immediately." "Found something." Isla frowned and dialed quickly, moving to the far corner of the balcony for privacy. "Please tell me you're alone," Penny began without preamble, her voice tight with tension. "What's wrong?" Isla pressed her back against the cool concrete of the building, instinctively shielding herself from potential observers. "I was finalizing your travel documents for next week's Costa Rica shoot when I found something on Malcolm's laptop." Penny hesitated, her breath audible through the connection. "A folder called Severance." "Isla, it contains legal documents transferring your photography rights to him, medical evaluations questioning your mental stability, and a custody strategy for Nora." Isla's hand tightened around the phone, her knuckles turning white. "That's impossible. Why would he?" "There's more." Penny cut her off, words tumbling out now as if she couldn't contain them. Email exchanges with Gregory dated months back, planning how to extract maximum value from your portfolio before the separation. They specifically mention making sure you're removed from the picture before your international recognition grows. The world tilted beneath Isla's feet, the cityscape blurring as she gripped the balcony railing for support. Gregory, Malcolm's business partner and supposed friend, had always made her uneasy with his calculating stare. But Malcolm? The man who had swept her off her feet, who read bedtime stories to their 4-year-old with such tenderness. "There must be some explanation," Isla whispered, but even as the words left her mouth, pieces began falling into place. Malcolm's insistence that all contracts go through him, the new life insurance policy with specific clauses she hadn't fully understood, his sudden interest in her upcoming travels. "I sent everything to your secure email. Isla, whatever you do, don't confront him yet." Penny's voice dropped lower, urgent. "I've been reading through these documents all afternoon. This isn't some half-formed idea, it's a comprehensive strategy. They've thought of everything, including contingencies if you fight back." "Nora." The name escaped Isla's lips like a prayer. "My God, Penny. My baby. I know. That's why I called immediately. The custody document is..." Penny hesitated. "It's brutal, Isla. They've manufactured evidence suggesting you're emotionally unstable, that your focus on your career makes you an unfit mother. There's even a psychological evaluation I'm certain you never underwent." Isla closed her eyes, fighting the wave of nausea threatening to overwhelm her. "I have to get Nora. We have to leave." "Don't do anything suspicious tonight," Penny cautioned. "Act normal. Come home with Malcolm. Let me work on a plan. I know someone who can help with documents, identities." "Isla." "There you are." Malcolm's voice cut through the night air, causing her to whirl around, nearly dropping her phone. He stood in the doorway to the balcony, silhouetted against the light from the gallery. "The Westons are asking for you. They're ready to make an offer on the entire Sierra series." "I'll call you back," she told Penny quickly before disconnecting and slipping the phone into her clutch. "Sorry, just getting some air. It's a bit overwhelming in there." Malcolm crossed to her, his tall frame blocking out the city lights as he placed his hands on her shoulders. His touch, once comforting, now sent a shiver of revulsion through her that she struggled to hide. "You deserve every bit of this success." His smile seemed genuine, his gray eyes warm as they met hers. "I'm proud of you, Isla." How many times had he rehearsed those words? How long had he been planning to betray her while speaking of pride and love? The questions burned in her throat, but she swallowed them down, forcing her lips into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. We should go back inside." His hand slid to the small of her back, guiding her toward the gallery doors. "Everything okay? You seem tense." "Just tired." She maintained a smile, thinking of Nora, safe at home with the nanny. Sweet, trusting Nora with her father's analytical mind and her mother's artistic sensitivity. "It's been a long day. We won't stay much longer," Malcolm promised, holding the door for her. "Just long enough to close the deal with the Westons. Then home to our girl." Our girl. The possessive phrase that had once seemed tender now carried sinister undertones. The custody strategy Penny had described. What kind of man plotted to take a child from her mother using fabricated mental health concerns? What kind of monster smiled and spoke of pride while planning such betrayal? The man standing beside her, apparently. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and sales discussions. Isla moved through it on autopilot, her photographer's training helping her maintain a facade of calm engagement while her mind raced with implications and plans. The Westons purchased her entire Sierra series for a sum that would have thrilled her just hours earlier. Now, the check felt like blood money. When they finally left the gallery, Malcolm placed a gentle kiss on her temple as he helped her into their luxury sedan. "You were magnificent tonight. This is just the beginning, you know. With the Costa Rica series, your international profile will explode." Would that be when he implemented his plan? When she returned from Costa Rica to find herself locked out of her home, her studio, her daughter's life? Or perhaps he never intended for her to return at all. The life insurance policy with its substantial payouts suddenly seemed far more sinister. "I'm looking forward to it," she lied, gazing out at the passing city lights rather than at his face. "Though I'll miss you and Nora." "We'll miss you too." His hand found hers, squeezing gently. "But it's only 10 days. We'll manage." 10 days that would change everything, though not in the way Malcolm had planned. That night, Isla lay beside Malcolm, heart thundering as she feigned sleep. Through barely open eyes, she watched him work on his laptop, unaware he was being observed. The blue light illuminated his features, handsome, focused, and utterly foreign to her now. She strained to see what he was typing, but the angle made it impossible without revealing she was awake. After nearly an hour, he closed the laptop and placed it on his nightstand before settling beside her, his breathing gradually slowing into the rhythm of sleep. Her mind raced with memories recast in a sickening new light. Their first meeting at a small Seattle exhibition where her early work had been displayed. His immediate interest, not just in her photographs but in her. The whirlwind romance that had seemed so genuine, his enthusiasm about representing her work through his arts management company. The way he'd encouraged her to sign paperwork she hadn't fully read because, "That's why you have me, darling, to handle the business side." She'd thought it was love. Now she wondered if it had always been calculated acquisition. Had he ever loved her at all, or had she simply been a business opportunity with valuable intellectual property? And Nora, had their daughter been part of the strategy too? A way to bind Isla more completely to him, to ensure her cooperation, to create leverage? No. She couldn't bear to think that Nora's conception had been calculated. Some things had to be real, even if their marriage wasn't. With agonizing slowness, Isla eased herself from the bed once Malcolm's breathing indicated deep sleep. Her bare feet made no sound on the plush carpet as she moved to his nightstand and carefully lifted the laptop. The password prompt glowed accusingly in the darkness. She'd never needed to access Malcolm's computer before, had respected his privacy just as he'd claimed to respect hers. What would he use as a password? His birthday? Too obvious. She tried Noraella, their daughter's first and middle names. Access denied. Island Mal, the pet names they'd once used for each other. Nothing. Then, a memory surfaced. Malcolm at Nora's 3rd birthday, showing her how to blow out candles, whispering that she should make a wish. Wishes have power, he told their daughter. Especially when you give them names. On a hunch, Isla typed acquisition wish, and the screen unlocked. Her hands trembling, she opened his email, scanning recent exchanges with Gregory. Most were innocuous business correspondence, but one from earlier that day caught her attention. Final preparations for severance complete. Legal documents ready for filing upon your word. Emmy confirms Costa Rica timing optimal for transfer protocol. Custody strategy in place with contingencies for resistance. Medical examiner. Or perhaps mental evaluation. She switched to the file browser, quickly locating the severance folder Penny had mentioned. Inside were dozens of documents, organized with Malcolm's characteristic precision. Legal briefs, medical reports, financial analyses. Her throat tightened as she opened a document titled, Custody Implementation. The clinical language couldn't disguise the cruelty of the strategy outlined within. Malcolm planned to have Isla declared emotionally unstable and professionally obsessive, using her dedication to photography as evidence that she prioritized career over motherhood. The document detailed how her travel schedule could be presented as abandonment, how episodes of artistic intensity could be reframed as mental instability. Most chilling was the section titled Child Asset Security, which outlined how Nora would be transitioned to exclusive paternal custody with minimal disruption to her development and maximal preservation of her value to company image. Her value. As if their daughter were nothing more than another asset to be acquired and managed. Fighting back nausea, Isla moved to close the document when a new email notification appeared. From Gregory, sent just minutes ago despite the late hour. Psychological evaluation documentation enhanced with additional episodes. Final version attached for your review before submission to legal team. Timing still set for her return from Costa Rica. Confirm ASAP as Weston acquisition timeline may accelerate. Attached was a file containing a completely fabricated psychological assessment, detailing incidents of emotional volatility and concerning maternal detachment that had never occurred. The document was dated 6 months earlier, supposedly from a therapist Isla had never met. It took every ounce of self-control not to slam the laptop closed. Instead, she carefully exited the programs, shut it down properly, and returned it to Malcolm's nightstand. Then she slipped back under the covers, her body rigid with the effort of appearing relaxed as her mind screamed with betrayal. Beside her, Malcolm slept peacefully, one hand outstretched toward her side of the bed as if reaching for her even in sleep. The gesture that had once seemed tender now felt like the reach of a predator. Dawn brought clarity and determination. While Malcolm showered, Isla made a single phone call to Penny, arranging to meet later that morning. Then she prepared breakfast as usual, setting out Nora's favorite cereal and slicing fruit into the animal shapes that always made her daughter giggle. Mommy! Nora's excited voice preceded her as she raced into the kitchen, still in her unicorn pajamas, dark curls wild from sleep. Is today park day? Isla knelt, gathering her daughter into a tight hug, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo and trying not to think about the child asset security document. How did you guess, clever girl? Yes, I thought we'd go feed the ducks. Will you take pictures of them? The mama duck had babies last time. Nora's face glowed with excitement as she climbed onto her chair, reaching immediately for the strawberry slices arranged like a fish on her plate. Of course. Isla managed a genuine smile despite the ache in her chest. I'll bring my camera. Malcolm entered, freshly showered and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. He dropped a kiss on Nora's head before pouring himself coffee. Park day, he asked, noticing Nora's excitement. Mommy's taking me to feed the ducks. Nora announced before stuffing a strawberry into her mouth. Will you join us? Isla asked, keeping her voice light, offering the opportunity as she would on any normal day. Malcolm checked his watch, his expression regretful. Can't today. Meeting with the buyers from yesterday's opening. Need to finalize the contract details. He crossed to Isla, placing a kiss on her forehead that took every ounce of her willpower not to flinch away from. You two have fun. I'll be home for dinner. We'll miss you, she said, the words acid on her tongue. Bring me a duck feather. Nora called as Malcolm gathered his briefcase. I'll try to remember, he promised with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, the same smile he'd given Isla when proposing, when learning she was pregnant, when viewing her photographs for the first time. Had any of it been real? As the front door closed behind him, Isla stood perfectly still, listening to the sound of his car starting in the circular driveway. Only when the engine faded into the distance did she move, pulling out her phone to text Penny, he's gone. Coming to you after the park. Mommy, can I wear my yellow dress to see the ducks? Nora asked, oblivious to the tension radiating from her mother. Of course, sweetheart. Isla knelt beside her daughter's chair, smoothing back those wild curls. You can wear whatever makes you happiest today. Hours later, as Nora fed ducks by the pond in her sunshine yellow dress, Isla finalized her plan with Penny, who sat beside her on the park bench, voice low and urgent. I've withdrawn cash from my personal accounts, Penny explained, handing Isla an envelope. 5,000. It's not much, but it should help until you can access the offshore account we set up for your international earnings. Isla tucked the envelope into her camera bag. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out. You're stronger than you think. Penny squeezed her hand. The documents will be ready by 6. New identity packets for both of you. My friend says they'll hold up to basic scrutiny, but you should avoid situations requiring deep background checks. We will. Isla watched Nora laugh as ducklings swarmed around her, competing for the breadcrumbs in her small hands. I've been thinking about where to go. Not Oregon, that's too obvious since we vacationed there last summer. Maybe north instead, into Canada. Penny shook her head. International borders mean passports, which means more risk. Go somewhere unexpected but within driving distance. Somewhere you've never mentioned to Malcolm. Coastal California, Isla decided after a moment's thought. There's a small arts community near Monterey where I was invited for a residency years ago, before I met Malcolm. I declined because it wasn't prestigious enough, but the town was beautiful. Remote enough to disappear, but with opportunities for someone with my skills. Perfect. Penny nodded approvingly. What's your exit strategy? Malcolm has a dinner meeting with the Weston buyers tonight. Once he's gone, I'll pack what we need, not much, just essentials that won't be immediately noticed. We'll leave after Nora's bedtime, supposedly to visit you because I have a migraine and need help. Isla had thought it through carefully during the sleepless night. By the time he realizes we're not at your place, we'll be hundreds of miles away. And the nanny? Teresa leaves at 7 on Fridays. She won't know anything's wrong until she arrives Monday morning. Penny looked out at Nora, her expression softening. How will you explain this to her? Isla followed her gaze, watching her daughter's innocent joy, her complete trust in the stability of her world. I don't know yet. She's only 4, maybe she'll adapt quickly. Children do, don't they? They do, Penny agreed, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. But at some point, she'll ask about her father. And I'll tell her the truth. That he loved her in his way, but that we had to leave. Isla's voice hardened. That some kinds of love are really just possession, and I couldn't let her grow up owned rather than cherished. By evening, Isla had withdrawn additional cash from accounts Malcolm didn't monitor, packed essentials in her camera gear bags, and secured their passports from the home safe while Malcolm prepared for his crucial dinner meeting. She'd selected items carefully, Enough clothes and toiletries for a few days, Nora's favorite stuffed rabbit, the portable hard drive containing all her photographic work, and a few small items of sentimental value. "You're sure you don't need me to cancel?" Malcolm asked as he adjusted his tie in the bedroom mirror. "You look pale." "It's just a headache starting," Isla lied, touching her temple lightly. "I'll take something for it. The Westons are important clients, you shouldn't cancel." He crossed to her, brushing his lips against her forehead in a gesture that once would have comforted her. "Call if it gets worse. I can come home early. We'll be fine. Nora and I might go to Penny's if I need help." She kept her voice casual, planting the seed of their destination. "Good idea." He picked up his phone, scrolling through messages. "Don't wait up. These dinner meetings can run late, especially with Gregory involved." Gregory. The architect of her destruction, according to those damning emails. She wondered if they would discuss her over wine and expensive steaks, fine-tuning the details of how to strip her of her child, her work, possibly even her freedom. "Have a good time," she managed, the banality of the phrase almost making her laugh. How many countless evenings had they exchanged these same words, this same casual kiss goodbye, all while he plotted to destroy her. After he left, she moved through the penthouse apartment with methodical focus, gathering the last essential items while Nora played contentedly in her room. The gallery show had been exhausting for her daughter too, who'd attended the early hours before the nanny took her home. Now, she was happily lost in a world of stuffed animals and picture books, unaware that her life was about to change irrevocably. "Nora, sweetheart." Isla knelt beside her daughter's small table where stuffed animals were arranged for a tea party. "How would you like to go on a special adventure tonight?" Nora looked up, dark eyes, so like Malcolm's, widening with interest. "What kind of adventure?" "A nighttime one. We're going to drive somewhere new and exciting." Isla kept her voice light, infusing it with enthusiasm she didn't feel. "Will Daddy come too?" The innocent question stabbed at Isla's heart. "Not this time, honey. Daddy has to work. This adventure is just for us girls." Nora considered this, her small face serious. "Like when we had spa day at Aunt Penny's?" "A bit like that, yes, but even more special." Isla smoothed her daughter's hair. "We need to pack a small bag with your most important things. But here's the tricky part, we can only take what fits in your backpack. It's a special adventure rule. Like a game." Nora brightened at the challenge. "Exactly like a game." Isla forced a smile. "What do you think you'll need?" As Nora deliberated between stuffed animals with the grave seriousness only a 4-year-old could muster, Isla fought back tears. This charade of adventure, this necessary deception of her own child, it felt wrong, even as she knew staying would be worse. When Nora finally asked why they were going to Aunt Penny's house so late, Isla managed another smile. "We're having a special adventure, sweetheart. Just us girls." 3 days later, they boarded a bus headed south, not to Monterey as initially planned. Isla had decided that was still too predictable, but to a small coastal town in Oregon that she'd once photographed for a travel magazine. Isla Morgan and her daughter Nora disappeared, and in their place, Rose Walsh and her daughter Lily began a new life. The bus rumbled along the coastal highway, Nora, now Lily, sleeping against Isla's side, exhausted from the days of constant movement. They'd stayed one night with Penny, then driven in Penny's car to Portland where they'd abandoned the vehicle in a long-term parking lot and switched to public transportation. From there, they'd taken a series of buses, never staying in one location more than a night, paying cash for small motels and simple meals. Through it all, Isla had maintained the fiction that this was an adventure, a special trip just for them. But Nora was perceptive, even at 4. By the second day, the questions had started. "When are we going home? Why can't we call Daddy? Why do I have to be Lily now?" Each question had pierced Isla's heart, forcing her to construct explanations that wouldn't frighten her daughter while still emphasizing the importance of their new names, their new story. Sometimes people need to start fresh, she'd explained as their third bus carried them toward the Oregon coast. Like when you spill paint on your picture and we turn it into something new instead of throwing it away. Are we spilled paint? Nora had asked, her small face confused. No, sweetheart. We're the artists making something new and beautiful. Isla had hugged her close, inhaling the scent of her hair, wondering if she was doing the right thing. Now, as the bus approached their final destination, Isla gazed out at the Pacific Ocean, its vast expanse of blue stretching to the horizon. Freedom and terror in equal measure. They would have to build everything from scratch: home, identity, community, security. But they would be safe. Safe from Malcolm's manipulations, from his coldly calculated plan to declare her unfit and take Nora away. Safe from becoming mere assets in his portfolio of possessions. The small coastal town came into view, its weathered buildings nestled between forest-covered hills and the rugged coastline. As the bus pulled into the station, little more than a covered bench and schedule board, Isla gathered their bags and gently woke her daughter. "We're here, Lily," she said, using the new name deliberately, helping it become familiar. "Our new home." "It's small, Nora," Lily observed, rubbing sleep from her eyes as they disembarked. "Where's our house?" "We don't have one yet. We'll stay in a hotel while we look." Isla adjusted her camera bag on her shoulder, the weight of their future heavy within it. The hard drive with her portfolio. The cash that would have to last until she established herself. The new identity documents that proclaimed them Rose and Lily Walsh, mother and daughter from Arizona relocating after a divorce. "I'm hungry," Lily announced, clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one item she'd refused to leave behind despite its distinctive appearance that Malcolm might recognize. "Let's find somewhere to eat, then." Isla took her daughter's hand, guiding her toward the town's main street. "And maybe ice cream after. With sprinkles." "Definitely with sprinkles." Hand in hand, they walked into their new life, leaving behind the wealth and security of Seattle for the uncertain freedom of anonymity. With each step, Isla became more firmly Rose, a woman who had never been married to a wealthy arts manager, who had never had her landscapes featured in prestigious galleries, who had never discovered betrayal in the blue glow of a laptop screen. Rose Walsh was simply a single mother with a talent for photography, looking for a quiet place to raise her daughter. And that would have to be enough. 5 years later. "Mom! Come see my science project." Lily called from the kitchen table of their small bungalow. At 9, she had Malcolm's analytical mind but Isla's artistic eye, a combination that had produced a colorful display on marine ecosystems. "It's beautiful, honey," Rose replied, still occasionally stumbling over the name she'd chosen to protect them both. 5 years, and sometimes she still woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting which life was real, the luxury penthouse in Seattle or this modest bungalow with its weathered shingles and garden of wild roses. She studied the project, genuinely impressed by Lily's meticulous research and creative presentation. Each ecosystem layer was represented in vivid watercolors, with carefully labeled specimens and detailed explanations of their interdependencies. The perfect blend of science and art, just like Lily herself. "Ms. Rodriguez said we might enter it in the county science fair if I add more about conservation efforts," Lily explained, pride evident in her voice as she pointed to a section on kelp forest preservation. "That's wonderful." Rose touched her daughter's dark curls, so like Malcolm's in color and texture. "I could help you photograph some tide pools this weekend for the conservation section. Would that work?" "Perfect." Lily beamed up at her. "Can we go to Seal Point? The pools there are amazing." "Seal Point it is." Rose made a mental note to charge her camera batteries. These days, she rarely used her professional equipment for personal outings, keeping her two worlds carefully separated. Rose Walsh, portrait photographer, existed entirely apart from Isla Morgan, landscape artist. Different styles, different subjects, different identities. 5 years of vigilance had transformed the once trusting photographer into someone who constantly checked exits, who used cash whenever possible, who taught her daughter never to mention their previous life. The habits of caution had become second nature, varying her routines, maintaining a low digital profile, developing relationships slowly and carefully. 5 years of rebuilding had turned her fragmented talent into something new. No longer capturing dramatic landscapes that had made Isla Morgan a rising star, Rose Walsh specialized in intimate portraits of local families, capturing genuine moments rather than spectacular vistas. Her work was respected within their small community, providing enough income to support them modestly but comfortably. The coastal community had embraced them gradually. The quiet single mother who took photographs, volunteered at the library, and fiercely protected her precocious daughter's privacy. They'd found a place here, carving out a life that, while lacking in luxury, offered something Malcolm's world never had: authenticity. "Mrs. Harlow needs this by tomorrow for the gallery display," Lily reminded her, carefully placing her project into a protective folder. Rose nodded, grateful again for Eleanor Harlow, the retired teacher whose small art gallery had provided Rose steady work and friendship without probing questions. Eleanor had accepted Rose's vague explanations about leaving a difficult situation, and recognized her talent without demanding her history. "We'll drop it off on our way to Ms. Harlow's tomorrow," Rose promised. "For now, bath and bedtime." "But Mom," Lily began the familiar protest. "School night," Rose reminded her gently. "Even future marine biologists need their sleep." Later, after Lily had fallen asleep, Rose sat at her small desk reviewing the invitation that had arrived yesterday. The Portland Arts Collective was hosting their annual showcase in 2 weeks, and they wanted to feature her portrait series, Weathered Faces, prominently. Normally, she would decline immediately. Larger cities meant greater exposure and risk. In 5 years, she'd never ventured further than the neighboring towns for her work, building a reputation as a skilled but strictly local photographer who preferred the intimacy of small community connections. But this opportunity was different. The Portland Arts Collective had national recognition. Having her work featured there could open doors to publications, to teaching opportunities, to the kind of financial security that had eluded them despite her careful budgeting and modest success. Eleanor had submitted Rose's work without telling her, and the recognition could provide the stability they still lacked. 5 years of building a photography business from scratch while working side jobs had left little for savings or Lily's education. One night, she murmured to herself, running her fingers over the embossed invitation. In and out. No networking, just deliver the prints and leave. The decision made, she allowed herself a small glass of wine and the luxury of remembering who she had been before, Isla Morgan, whose stark, powerful landscapes had been featured in galleries across the West Coast. Before Malcolm had stolen her trust, her security, and nearly her child. She wondered sometimes what had happened after they'd fled. Had Malcolm implemented his plan anyway, painting her as unstable, as a thief of her own work? Had he profited from her earlier portfolio? Occasionally, she'd searched online for news about him, but always stopped herself before clicking any links. The past was dangerous territory. Tonight, something compelled her to type his name into the search bar. The results loaded slowly, as if her ancient laptop was giving her time to reconsider. Malcolm Thornton, CEO of Vision Partners, announces expansion. The headline was from just 3 months ago. So he'd continued his success, apparently unhindered by his wife and daughter's disappearance. The accompanying photo showed him looking much as she remembered. Handsome, confident, impeccably dressed, addressing what appeared to be shareholders at an annual meeting. She should close the browser. Looking deeper was unnecessary risk. Yet her finger clicked almost of its own volition, opening the article. Malcolm Thornton, founder and CEO of Vision Partners, announced today the company's expansion into digital media representation, building on their successful management of visual artists and photographers. This marks another milestone in the company's impressive growth since Thornton's restructuring of leadership 5 years ago, when he bought out co-founder Gregory Price amid rumors of ethical disagreements. Rose stared at the screen, rereading the last sentence. Ethical disagreements. Malcolm had bought out Gregory. That didn't align with what she remembered. They had been perfectly aligned in their plans to destroy her. Before she could stop herself, she searched for more information on Gregory Price, finding a small item from a business journal dated 4 years earlier. Former Vision Partners executive Gregory Price sentenced to 4 years for fraud and corporate espionage. Price, who left the company following undisclosed disputes with founder Malcolm Thornton, was found guilty of attempting to sell proprietary client information to competitors. Rose closed the laptop abruptly, her hands shaking slightly. What did it mean? Had there been some falling out between Malcolm and Gregory after she left? Or was this all part of Malcolm's image rehabilitation, distancing himself from Gregory's more unsavory activities while maintaining the benefits of their joint planning? It changed nothing, she told herself firmly. The documents she'd seen were real. The plans to declare her mentally unstable, to take custody of Nora, to claim her photographic work as company assets, all of it had been meticulously detailed in Malcolm's own files. 5 years, she whispered, gazing at the darkened screen that had just shown his image. 5 years of running, and you never missed a step. She pushed away from the desk, moving to check on Lily one more time before bed. Her daughter slept peacefully, one arm wrapped around the same stuffed rabbit she'd insisted on bringing during their escape. Its fur was worn thin in places now, one ear slightly misshapen from countless washings, but Lily refused to replace it. Sometimes Rose wondered if, on some subconscious level, Lily remembered it was a gift from her father. If some part of her clung to this connection to the man she now rarely mentioned. The questions about Malcolm had gradually faded over the years, though occasionally Lily would ask about her biological father in moments of quiet vulnerability. Rose had constructed a narrative that was neither entirely true nor completely false, that Lily's father had loved her but couldn't be part of their lives, that sometimes adults made choices that weren't about children at all. She never portrayed Malcolm as a villain, knowing that someday Lily might want to form her own opinion. Now, looking at her sleeping daughter, Rose reconsidered the Portland invitation. The risk was small, the potential reward significant. Portland was a large city where she'd be one face among thousands. Malcolm had no reason to be there, no way of knowing she would attend. One night couldn't undo all her careful planning. For Lily's future, for the education fund that remained stubbornly inadequate despite Rose's careful saving, it was worth the calculated risk. Leaning down, she brushed a soft kiss against Lily's forehead, whispering, "Sweet dreams, my brave girl." Tomorrow, she would call Eleanor and accept the invitation. One small step toward the future they deserved, even if it meant briefly emerging from the protective shadows they'd inhabited for 5 long years. The Portland Arts Collective occupied a renovated warehouse, its industrial framework softened by strategic lighting and flowing fabric installations. Rose entered cautiously, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the avant-garde fashion around her. 3 of her portraits, intimate captures of weather-worn fishermen's faces, had been given prominent placement near the entrance, drawing substantial attention from the early arrivals. "You must be Rose Walsh," a curator approached, hand extended. "Your work is extraordinary. The raw emotion you capture, it's generating significant interest." Rose smiled politely, accepting a glass of champagne she didn't intend to drink. "Thank you. I'm honored to be included. Several collectors have asked to meet you. Would you mind? Actually, I need to check my display first. Perhaps later." Rose kept her tone apologetic but firm, already scanning the room for the quickest exit routes. Slipping away, she circled the perimeter, instinctively mapping exits while appearing to admire the artwork. The plan was simple: stay 1 hour, avoid photographers, decline any publicity opportunities, and leave before the main crowd arrived. So far, everything was proceeding perfectly. Her work was receiving attention, but she remained largely anonymous, just another artist in a sea of creative personalities. No one here knew her as Isla Morgan. No one questioned her history or background. She was simply Rose Walsh, talented portrait photographer from a small coastal community, momentarily stepping onto a larger stage. She was studying a fascinating metal sculpture when a voice behind her stopped her heart. The technique is interesting, but it lacks soul, don't you think? 5 years hadn't changed Malcolm's voice. That smooth, cultured tone that had once made her feel cherished now sent ice through her veins. Slowly, she turned. His expression shifted from casual interest to shock, color draining from his face as recognition dawned. Isla. The name she'd abandoned hung between them like a ghost. "Excuse me," she managed, attempting to move past him. His hand caught her wrist, not roughly, but with enough pressure to halt her escape. 5 years, he whispered. 5 years of searching, wondering if you and Nora were even alive. Rose pulled her arm free, glancing around for potential witnesses or help. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Rose." "Rose?" A bitter smile twisted his lips. "Is that what you're calling yourself now? And Nora? What name did you give our daughter?" She stepped back, maintaining distance. "I took nothing that wasn't mine. My child, my freedom, my life." "My child," he corrected, eyes hardening. "And don't pretend this was about freedom. You disappeared without a word, taking my daughter after seeing something you completely misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" The word escaped as a harsh laugh. "I saw the documents, Malcolm. The plans to declare me unstable, to take my work, to ensure I'd never see Nora again." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps. Or calculation. "You have no idea what was really happening." "I know exactly what was happening. You were showing your true self." She straightened her shoulders. "And now you found me. What happens next?" "You destroy everything I've built, just like you planned 5 years ago." His hand shot out, not to grab her but to brace against the wall beside her head. "Where is she? Where is my daughter?" "Safe. Loved. Far from whatever game you're playing." Rose ducked under his arm, creating distance. "Stay away from us, Malcolm. I have nothing you want anymore." "You have everything I want," he replied, his voice suddenly hollow with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "And I will get her back. Whatever it takes." As she walked away, the weight of his stare burning into her back, Rose knew her carefully constructed new life had just begun to crumble. 5 years of hiding, of rebuilding, of creating safety for herself and Lily, all threatened by a chance encounter at an event she'd never wanted to attend. The question wasn't if Malcolm would come for them, but when. And this time, she wouldn't be able to simply disappear. Have you ever faced an impossible choice between bitter truth and comfortable lies? Between security and freedom? Between protecting those you love and preserving your own integrity? If so, you understand the devastating decision that forced Rose to flee with her daughter in the dead of night. But now, 5 years later, the past she's been running from has finally caught up with her. Comment below if you think Rose made the right choice in taking her daughter and disappearing, or if she should have confronted Malcolm directly with what she discovered. Like this video and subscribe to see what happens when two versions of truth collide, and a mother must decide how far she'll go to protect the life she's built from the ashes of betrayal. The drive back to Cedar Cove was a blur of mounting anxiety and frantic planning. Rose gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, her mind racing through contingency plans. By the time she pulled into the driveway of their small bungalow, dawn was breaking over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the garden Lily had helped plant. Her hands shook as she unlocked the front door. Inside, the house was quiet and still. Lily would be at Eleanor's, safe in the guest room the older woman had decorated especially for her occasional overnight stays. But for how much longer would anywhere be safe? Now that Malcolm had found her, what would his next move be? Rose moved through the cottage methodically, gathering essential documents, emergency cash, the go bag she'd always kept ready despite years of relative security. The rational part of her mind knew running again was probably futile. Malcolm had resources she couldn't match, determination fueled by 5 years of searching. But the instinct to flee, to protect Lily from the man who had once viewed her as nothing more than a useful asset, overrode all logical considerations. She was stuffing clothes into a duffel bag when her phone rang, the number belonging to only 3 people. Her stomach clenched as she answered. "Eleanor? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," the elderly gallery owner assured her. "Lily is still asleep. I just wanted to check if you'd made it back from Portland yet. You sounded concerned when you called last night." Concerned was a mild word for the barely controlled panic she'd felt while explaining she needed to return immediately, asking Eleanor to keep Lily until she arrived. "I'm home," she confirmed, collapsing onto the edge of her bed. "Thank you for taking care of her." "Of course." A pause, then, "Rose, whatever's happening, you're not alone in this. You know that, right?" The simple statement nearly broke her composure. After years of self-reliance, of trusting no one completely with their situation, Eleanor's quiet support was almost too much to bear. "I know," she managed, fighting back tears. "But this is complicated. Most important things are." Eleanor's voice remained steady, grounding. "Would it help to talk about it over coffee? Perhaps once Lily's had her breakfast." Rose hesitated. The habit of secrecy was deeply ingrained after 5 years of careful vigilance. But Eleanor had proven her trustworthiness time and again, and Rose was desperately in need of advice, of perspective beyond her own fear-driven thoughts. "Coffee would be good," she agreed finally. "But not at the cafe. Somewhere private." "My place, then. I'll make pancakes for Lily, and we can talk while she reads in the garden." 2 hours later, seated in Eleanor's book-lined study while Lily explored her extensive collection of botanical guides on the back porch, Rose finally shared the truth. Not all of it, some details were still too painful, too private, but enough for Eleanor to understand the gravity of their situation. "So, this man, your ex-husband, is a powerful CEO who's been searching for you and Lily for 5 years, Eleanor summarized, her weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "And now he's found you." "Yes." Rose stared into her own untouched coffee. "And he'll come for her." "I have no doubt about that." "Because he loves his daughter?" The question, asked with such genuine curiosity rather than judgment, made Rose look up sharply. "Because she's his property, his heir, useful to his corporate image." "Those are cold motivations for a 5-year search," Eleanor observed mildly. "Malcolm Thornton is a cold man. Everything is business to him. Our entire marriage was just a transaction to acquire my family's technology patents. And yet he spent considerable resources looking for you both. Maintained a public search long after most would have given up. That suggests something beyond mere business interest." Rose shook her head, frustrated by Eleanor's apparent devil's advocacy. "You don't understand who he is, what he's capable of. I heard him planning to frame me for corporate espionage to take Lily away permanently. His exact words were that, 'The child is more useful with me.'" A terrible thing to say, Eleanor acknowledged. Unforgivable, perhaps. But people can change in 5 years, Rose. Or should I call you Isla now? Rose is fine. It's who I am now. She set down her mug with a decisive click. And Malcolm doesn't change. He calculates, adapts, finds the most advantageous position, but his core remains the same. Cold, strategic, ruthless when necessary. Then why are we having this conversation? Eleanor asked gently. If you're so certain of his nature and intentions, why haven't you already fled with Lily? Why seek my advice at all? The question struck at the heart of Rose's uncertainty. Because running worked once, when he wasn't expecting it. I don't think it will work again. He has resources I can't match, networks I can't evade. She swallowed hard. And Lily has a life here. Friends, school, stability. I don't want to tear her away from everything familiar a second time. So what are your options? I don't know. Rose ran a hand through her short auburn hair, a gesture of frustration she'd developed since cutting off the long blonde waves Malcolm had admired. Fight him legally. He has teams of attorneys and fabricated evidence of corporate espionage against me. Reason with him. He doesn't respond to emotional appeals, only strategic advantage. Run again. He'd find us eventually, and the pattern would just repeat. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, her kind eyes thoughtful as she considered Rose's dilemma. Perhaps, she said finally, the answer lies not in what you do, but in what you know. What I know. You heard a conversation 5 years ago that led you to believe your husband planned to destroy you, but you left before seeing those plans enacted. What if there were details you missed? Context you didn't have? Information that might change how you approach this confrontation? Rose shook her head emphatically. I know what I heard. Yes, but do you know what happened next? After you disappeared? How did it affect their plans, their relationship, their actions over these 5 years? The questions gave Rose pause. She'd followed news about Vision Partners, about the corporate espionage allegations that had indeed emerged as planned. She'd seen Malcolm's public appeals for information about his missing wife and daughter. But the inner workings of what had happened after her disappearance, how it had affected their carefully laid plans, remained a mystery. Knowledge is power, my dear, Eleanor continued, refilling Rose's coffee cup. Before you decide your next move, perhaps you should gather more intelligence about your adversary's current position. How? I can hardly walk into Vision Partners and ask for an update on their plans to frame me. A smile creased Eleanor's face. No, but you are a highly skilled photographer with connections to the arts community. And you have friends who might have resources you don't. Rose considered this, a plan beginning to form in her mind. You're right. Before I make any decisions, I need more information about Malcolm's current situation, about what happened to their original plan, about what resources he might bring to bear against me now. And while you gather that intelligence, Lily can stay here with me. This cottage has been in my family for generations. Quite secure, with an excellent security system installed by a talented consultant I know. Eleanor winked, lightening the moment. No one would think to look for her in the home of an elderly gallery owner. Relief washed over Rose at this simple, practical solution. A temporary safety measure while she gathered the information she needed to make a more permanent plan. Thank you, Eleanor. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. You already have, my dear. You and Lily brought life back to this old house. Gave an isolated widow something to look forward to each day. She reached across the table to pat Rose's hand. Family takes care of family, even when they're not related by blood. Family. The word caught in Rose's throat. In fleeing the false family Malcolm had constructed for his corporate convenience, she and Lily had found a real one built on genuine affection, mutual support, and trust rather than calculation and advantage. Whatever came next, whatever Malcolm planned to do now that he'd found them, Rose knew one thing with absolute certainty: she wasn't alone this time, and that made all the difference in the world. The first sign that Malcolm was making his move came 3 days after the Portland Gallery confrontation. Rose had just dropped Lily at school, maintaining normal routines while quietly gathering information, when her phone buzzed with a text from Mina, the nurse at the local clinic where she'd done a photography project last year. There's a man asking questions about you at the clinic. Corporate type, expensive suit. Claims to be old friend looking to reconnect. Rose's fingers tightened around her phone. It had begun exactly as she'd feared. Not Malcolm himself, he was too strategic for that, but his advanced team gathering intelligence, confirming her identity, preparing the ground for whatever he planned next. By the time she reached her cottage, 3 more messages had arrived from different friends reporting similar inquiries around town: the hardware store owner, the barista at her favorite cafe, even Lily's art teacher. Cedar Cove's close-knit community, normally a comfort, now meant word of these unusual questions would spread quickly. People would talk, make connections, perhaps mention them to Lily before Rose could prepare her. She was weighing her options when a sharp knock at the door made her freeze. Too soon for Malcolm's legal team, too direct for his usual subtle approach. With cautious steps, she moved to the window, peering through the curtains at her unexpected visitor. The man on her porch was vaguely familiar, tall, broad-shouldered, with the alert posture of someone accustomed to assessing threats. Not one of the anonymous corporate investigators she'd spotted around town, but someone she'd seen before in another life. It took her a moment to place him, James Callum, Malcolm's former head of security, a quiet, watchful presence at company events during her marriage. Rose hesitated, instinct warring with curiosity. Callum had always been professional, respectful, one of the few at Vision partners who had treated her as more than just the CEO's decorative wife. But his loyalty had been to Malcolm, hadn't it? The decision was made for her when Callum spoke through the door, his deep voice pitched low enough that only she would hear. "Mrs. Thornton, Isla, please. I'm alone. I'm not here on his behalf." The formal address, the one she hadn't used in 5 years, sent a chill down her spine. But there was something in his tone, urgency, perhaps, or sincerity, that compelled her to open the door a cautious few inches, security chains still in place. "How did you find me?" she demanded without preamble. Callum's weathered face revealed nothing. "I've been looking for 3 years. Not for him, for myself." "Why should I believe that?" "Because Malcolm Thornton fired me 6 months after you disappeared when I refused to falsify security footage that would have supported the espionage allegations against you." He met her gaze directly. "And because I have information you need if you're going to protect yourself and your daughter." Rose studied him for a long moment, weighing the risk against the potential value of whatever he knew. Finally, she closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it. "You have 10 minutes. And if this is some kind of trap, remember that I've spent 5 years learning how to disappear. I can do it again." Callum nodded, following her into the small living room with measured steps. He remained standing, respecting her unspoken desire to maintain distance and control. "Malcolm will file for emergency custody of Lily within the next 48 hours, he began without preamble. "The paperwork is already prepared. His legal team has been on standby for years, waiting for this moment." Rose felt the blood drain from her face. "On what grounds?" "Parental abduction. Emotional instability. Fabricated evidence suggesting you're an unfit mother." Callum's expression remained neutral, professional, as he delivered this devastating news. "They've built a compelling case, Mrs. Thornton. One that most family courts would find persuasive, especially against a woman who's been living under a false identity." "How do you know all this?" "I still have contacts at Vision Partners. People who owe me favors or disagree with Malcolm's methods but need their paychecks." He paused, then added, "And I've been monitoring certain encrypted communications since I left the company." "Old habits." Rose sank onto the sofa, mind racing. "Why are you telling me this? What's your angle?" "Let's just say I have personal reasons for wanting to see Mr. Thornton face consequences for his actions. And I believe in protecting children from power struggles between adults." Callum reached into his jacket, extracting a small flash drive which he placed on the coffee table between them. "This contains evidence of the original conspiracy against you. Security footage. Email exchanges between Malcolm and Gregory. Audio recordings from meetings you weren't aware were happening in your own home." Rose stared at the unassuming device, afraid to touch it, yet desperate to know its contents. "Why didn't you come forward with this 5 years ago?" "I didn't have it all then. And frankly, you disappeared so completely I couldn't find you." A hint of professional admiration colored his voice. "You did an impressive job covering your tracks." "Not impressive enough, apparently. No one stays hidden forever. Not from someone with Malcolm Thornton's resources and motivation." Callum glanced at his watch. Your 10 minutes are nearly up. I'll leave you to review the files. There's contact information for me in there as well, if you have questions or need assistance. As he moved toward the door, Rose found her voice again. Why did he fire you? Really? Callum paused, something complicated flickering across his stoic features. Because I told him his plan to frame his wife for corporate espionage while his 4-year-old daughter slept down the hall was reprehensible. And because I suspected there was more to the story than he and Gregory were sharing with the security team. He met her gaze directly. For what it's worth, I don't think Malcolm anticipated how far Gregory was willing to go. Not that it excuses his part in it. After he left, Rose sat motionless, staring at the flash drive as if it might explode. In a way, she feared it might, destroying the certainty that had guided her actions for 5 years, the clear narrative of betrayal that had justified taking Lily away from her father. When she finally plugged it into her laptop, the contents were exactly as Callum had described. Security footage showing Gregory accessing her computer late at night, weeks before the conversation she'd overheard. Email exchanges discussing the contingency plan if she became problematic during the merger negotiations. Cost damning of all, audio recordings from the hidden security system in Malcolm's home office, including the full conversation from that fateful night, not just the portion she had overheard. She listened, heart pounding, as the familiar voices filled her small living room. The board is already asking questions about the patent transfers, Gregory's sharp voice came through clearly. We need a distraction, something significant enough to overshadow everything else. The evidence is nearly ready, he continued. Emails, server access logs, everything points to corporate espionage. Once we present it to the board, they'll have no choice but to take action. What about Isla? Malcolm asked, his tone impossible to read. Will she suspect anything? She's oblivious, Gregory replied with obvious disdain. Too busy with her charity work and mothering to notice what's happening right under her nose. By the time she realizes, it'll be too late. The evidence against her will be overwhelming. It's almost poetic, Malcolm said, and Rose could hear the smile in his voice. Marrying the daughter of Harlow Innovations to acquire their neural interface patents, then discrediting her just in time for the Nexus merger. The board will insist she be removed from everything, the company, the foundation. They'll practically beg me to file for divorce and custody of Lily. Full custody, obviously, Gregory agreed. Can't have a corporate spy raising the Keller heir. Besides, the child is more useful with me. Maintains the family image without the inconvenience of the wife. To think she actually believed you fell in love with her, Gregory said with a laugh that sliced through Rose's last desperate hope that she'd misunderstood. The things we do for business, Malcolm replied dismissively. The Harlow patents were worth every dinner date, every pretend romantic gesture. And to be fair, she made it easy. So eager to believe someone like me could fall for someone like her. So far, everything matched Rose's memory perfectly. But the recording continued, capturing what she hadn't stayed to hear. When do we move? Gregory asked, his voice shifting to business efficiency. Friday. The board meets at 10 o'clock. By noon, security will be escorting Isla from the building. I've already spoken with my attorneys about the divorce and custody arrangements. There was a pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Then Malcolm's voice again, but with a shift in tone Rose couldn't quite identify. Speaking of attorneys, Andrews raised some concerns about the custody strategy. Said the courts are unlikely to grant full custody without clear evidence of maternal unfitness, even with the espionage allegations. That's why we have the psychological evaluation, Gregory reminded him. The one showing her increasingly erratic behavior and concerning attachment issues with Lily. The evaluation based on edited security footage and statements from staff who've been incentivized to support our narrative. Malcolm's voice held a note Rose had never heard before. Hesitation, perhaps, or something like concern. It feels excessive. The espionage charges are one thing, business is business, but using Lily as a bargaining chip. Getting squeamish, Malcolm? Gregory's tone sharpened. Need I remind you what's at stake here? The Nexus merger hinges on exclusive control of the Harlow patents. Patents that legally still include Isla's name, despite your careful prenup. Patents that could end up contested in a standard divorce unless we have leverage. There are other ways to handle the patents. Legal ways. Legal ways that take time we don't have. The merger deadline is non-negotiable, and Isla has started asking questions about the patent transfer documents you had her sign last year. She mentioned consulting her own attorney to better understand her rights within the company. Rose's breath caught. She had indeed consulted an attorney privately after noticing discrepancies in patent documentation Malcolm had assured her were standard legal formalities, but she told no one about that meeting, not even her assistant. You've been monitoring her calls. Malcolm's voice was flat, a statement rather than a question. Of course I have, just as you authorized in the security protocol after the Westfield data breach. Though I noticed you didn't object to that surveillance when it provided useful intelligence about the Richardson negotiation. Another pause, longer this time. Then Malcolm again, his voice hardening into something more familiar, the ruthless CEO making a business decision. Proceed with the plan as outlined. But I want Callum to review all the evidence before it goes to the board. And I want your assurance that once we have what we need, the more extreme measures against Isla will be unnecessary. Always the sentimentalist beneath that cold exterior, Gregory laughed without warmth. Fine. Once the patents are secured and the merger completed, you can be as generous as you like in the divorce settlement. Play the magnanimous ex-husband if it makes you feel better. As long as we get what we need first. The recording ended there, leaving Rose staring at her laptop screen, her certainty fractured but not destroyed. Yes, Malcolm had shown a moment of hesitation about using their daughter as leverage. Yes, he'd expressed some reservations about Gregory's more extreme tactics. But he had still agreed to the plan, still prioritized the business over their marriage, over Lily's well-being. Still revealed that their entire relationship had been a calculated business acquisition. The other files on the drive provided additional context. Evidence that Gregory had been the primary architect of the espionage frame-up. That he had manipulated certain security protocols without Malcolm's knowledge. That his ambition extended beyond what even Malcolm had initially approved. But none of it exonerated Malcolm. None of it changed the fundamental betrayal at the heart of their marriage. What it did provide, however, was leverage, concrete evidence she could use if Malcolm pursued legal action to reclaim custody of Lily. Proof that the original espionage allegations had been fabricated, that their marriage had been entered into under false pretenses, that Lily had been viewed as a strategic asset rather than a beloved child. As she closed the laptop, Rose's phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. Lily is doing homework in my shop after school. Take your time. The simple message, with its implicit understanding that she needed space to process whatever Callum had shared, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. In the midst of this unfolding crisis, she wasn't alone. She had allies, friends, a community that would stand with her against Malcolm's wealth and power. She was still sitting there, mind racing with potential strategies, when another text arrived, this one from an unknown number. The message was brief, formal, and sent ice through her veins. Ms. Walsh, a legal matter concerning your daughter requires urgent attention. Please contact Blackwell and Associates at your earliest convenience to avoid additional complications. It had begun exactly as Callum had warned. The legal machinery of Malcolm Thornton's retribution, set in motion after 5 years of searching, and Rose had less than 48 hours to prepare her defense. The law offices of Morrison & Shin occupied a modest building in downtown Portland, their practical approach to family law a deliberate contrast to the gleaming corporate firms Rose had known in her previous life. Elena Chen, the partner who had agreed to see Rose on emergency notice, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s whose no-nonsense demeanor had immediately put Rose at ease. Let me be clear about where we stand, Elena said, reviewing the documents Rose had provided, including copies of key files from Callum's flash drive. Your ex-husband has significant advantages in any custody battle. His resources are practically unlimited. He can claim you abducted your daughter and assumed a false identity. And technically, he'd be correct. I had cause, Rose insisted. The evidence shows. The evidence shows a complicated corporate conspiracy that most family court judges won't fully understand or consider relevant, Elena interrupted gently. What matters is that you took your daughter and disappeared for 5 years, denying her father any contact. Rose's stomach clenched. So you're saying I'll lose her? I'm saying we need to be strategic. Elena leaned forward, her expression intent. Mr. Thornton has filed for emergency temporary custody, claiming you're a flight risk, which, given your history, is a reasonable concern from the court's perspective. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? That's impossible. I need time to prepare. Emergency hearings move quickly, especially with high-profile parties involved. Judge Rollins has a reputation for efficiency. Elena's tone softened slightly. But she's also known for prioritizing children's well-being over parental rights. That's where we focus our strategy. How? By demonstrating that abruptly removing Lily from her stable environment would be traumatic and unnecessary. By showing you've created a secure, loving home where she's thriving. And by presenting evidence that raises serious questions about Mr. Thornton's motives and methods. Rose nodded slowly, processing this approach. And the espionage allegations? The false identity? We addressed them head-on. You fled because you genuinely believed your husband was framing you for corporate crimes and planning to take your daughter away permanently. Your actions, while extreme, were taken out of maternal protection, not malice. Elena closed the folder decisively. Now, tell me everything about Lily's life in Cedar Cove. Her school, her friends, her activities, every detail that shows she's flourishing in the life you've built. As Rose described their 5 years in the coastal town, Lily's excellent academic record, her art awards, her close friendships, her volunteer work at Eleanor's gallery, she felt a growing certainty that they had created something worth fighting for. Not just a hiding place, but a genuine home where Lily had been able to develop into a confident, compassionate child despite the secrets surrounding her early years. One more question, Elena said when Rose finished, her expression carefully neutral. Has Lily had any contact with her father during these 5 years? Letters, phone calls, emails, anything? Of course not. I've been careful to. Rose stopped, registering something in Elena's tone that sent alarm bells ringing. Why? Do you have reason to think there's been contact? Elena hesitated, then turned her laptop to show a document from Malcolm's legal filing. This is part of their evidence. Screenshots of online conversations between Lily and someone she refers to as chess friend. The messages date back approximately 6 months. Rose scanned the images with growing horror. The conversation seemed innocent enough on the surface, discussions about chess strategies, books they both enjoyed, science topics Lily found interesting, but certain details jumped out with sickening clarity. References to New York that could only come from someone who knew Lily had lived there as a young child. Questions about her daily routine that could help track their location. Subtle probes about her relationship with her mother. I had no idea, Rose whispered, feeling physically ill. She has a tablet for schoolwork, but it's monitored. At least, I thought it was. Children are remarkably resourceful with technology, especially bright ones like your daughter appears to be. Elena's voice held no judgment, only practical concern. The question is how these communications began and what we tell the judge about them. I need to talk to Lily, Rose said, rising abruptly. I need to understand what happened, what she knows. Carefully, Elena cautioned. Whatever you discover, remember that she's a child caught between parents. Her perspective and emotional well-being need to be protected, even as we prepare for tomorrow's hearing. The drive back to Cedar Cove passed in a blur of anxiety and betrayal. Had Lily been secretly communicating with Malcolm all these months? Had she somehow found him online? Or had he found her? And what had she told him about their life, their location, their daily routines? Eleanor's gallery was quiet when Rose arrived, the afternoon low leaving only a few browsing customers among the tall shelves. Lily sat at her usual table in the children's section, homework spread before her, dark curls falling across her face in a gesture so reminiscent of Malcolm that Rose's heart clenched. "Mom!" Lily looked up with a smile that faded as she registered Rose's expression. "Is something wrong? We need to talk, sweetheart. In private." Rose kept her voice gentle despite the turmoil inside. "Can you pack up your things?" Lily complied, her movements suddenly careful, measured, another unconscious echo of her father that Rose had never noticed before. They said goodbye to Eleanor, who squeezed Rose's shoulder in silent support, and walked the short distance to their cottage in uncomfortable silence. Once inside, Rose sat Lily at the kitchen table, taking a moment to prepare hot chocolate, a family tradition for difficult conversations since Lily was small. The familiar ritual gave her time to organize her thoughts, to find words that wouldn't frighten or accuse. "Lily," she began finally, setting steaming mugs before them. "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Even if you think I might be upset by the answer." Lily's fingers tightened around her mug. "Is this about chess, friend?" The direct question took Rose by surprise. "Yes." "How did you know?" "Because you have that look, the one you get when you're worried about something to do with our old life." Lily met her gaze steadily, suddenly seeming older than her 9 years. "And because Ms. Chen's office called Eleanor to ask about my online activities. She didn't tell me exactly what they wanted, but I could guess." Rose took a deep breath. "Who is Chess friend, Lily?" A long pause. Then, "He says he's my dad." Despite having suspected this answer, hearing it spoken aloud sent a wave of dizziness through Rose. "When did this start? How did he find you?" 6 months ago, after the online chess tournament at school, Lily's voice was small but steady. "I used my real name, Nora Thornton, because it was an official competition. He saw it on the results page and sent me a message through the platform. And you responded without telling me. I was curious." Lily's chin lifted slightly, another gesture so like Malcolm that it was almost painful to witness. "You never tell me anything real about him, just that he was smart and determined and ran a technology company. I wanted to know more." Rose swallowed hard, fighting back the instinctive panic. "What did he tell you about himself? About why we left?" "He said you had a misunderstanding. That he never wanted us to leave. That he's been looking for us ever since." Lily hesitated, then added, "He said he loves me and misses me every day." The simple statement, delivered with a child's unquestioning acceptance, cut deeper than any accusation. Had Malcolm actually used those exact words? Had he meant them? Or was this just another strategic move in his campaign to reclaim what he saw as his property? "Why didn't you tell me about these conversations?" Rose asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. Lily studied her hot chocolate, avoiding Rose's gaze. "Because I knew you'd make me stop. And because," she trailed off, uncertainty replacing her earlier confidence. "Because what, sweetheart?" "Because sometimes you get a sad, scared look when I ask about Dad. Like you're afraid of something. And I didn't want to make you afraid." Lily looked up, her eyes, Malcolm's eyes, bright with unshed tears. "I just wanted to know who he was. If he remembered me. If he ever thought about me." Rose moved around the table, pulling Lily into a tight embrace. "Oh, Lily. Of course he thinks about you. How could anyone who knew you ever forget you?" As she held her daughter, Rose's mind raced with implications. Lily had been communicating with Malcolm for months. He had been gathering information, building a relationship, preparing for this moment while Rose remained oblivious. And tomorrow, a judge would decide if that secret connection justified emergency custody. Am I in trouble? Lily asked, her voice muffled against Rose's shoulder. No, sweetheart. Not with me. Rose pulled back, brushing hair from Lily's face with gentle fingers. But there's something important I need to tell you. Your father is here in Cedar Cove. He's filed legal papers asking for custody. Lily's eyes widened. He's here now. Can I see him? The eagerness in her voice sent a stab of fear through Rose's heart. It's complicated, Lily. There's going to be a court hearing tomorrow where a judge will decide what happens next. What do you mean, what happens next? Will I have to go with him? I don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave Cedar Cove. Alarm replaced excitement in Lily's expression. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen, Rose promised, though the words felt hollow against the legal reality Elena had outlined. But I need you to understand that whatever happens in court, whatever the judge decides, I will always be your mother. I will always love you and protect you. Nothing can change that. Lily nodded solemnly, processing this with the same thoughtful focus she brought to chess matches and science problems. Does Dad want to take me away from you? The question, direct, perceptive, impossible to evade, hung between them. Rose had promised herself years ago never to lie to Lily about important matters, even when the truth was difficult or complicated. She wouldn't start now, with so much at stake. I think he wants what he believes is best for you, she said carefully. But we disagree about what that is. I believe you belong here in the home we've built together, with your school and friends and the life you know. He believes you should be with him, in his world. But why can't I have both? Why can't I see him sometimes and live with you? Lily's practical question cut through the adult complications with a child's clarity. That's what Zoe's parents do after their divorce. Rose hesitated, searching for words that would explain without burdening Lily with the full complexity of adult betrayal and corporate machinations. Your father and I, we haven't been able to communicate well, to find that kind of compromise. That's why we're going to court, to have someone help us figure out what's fair. Will I have to talk to the judge? Tell them what I want? I don't know yet, sweetheart. But if you do, all you need to do is tell the truth about your life here, about your conversations with your father, about what would make you happy. I want to stay with you, Lily said immediately, wrapping her arms around Rose's waist. But I want to know my dad, too. Is that okay? Is it okay to want both? Rose held her daughter close, fighting back tears. Of course it's okay. It's more than okay. It's completely natural to want to know your father, to have a relationship with him. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to add, and whatever you told him in your messages, whatever questions you answered, that's okay too. You didn't do anything wrong. As Lily relaxed against her, some of the tension easing from her small shoulders, Rose made a silent vow. Whatever happened in court. Tomorrow, whatever legal maneuvers Malcolm attempted, she would find a way to protect what mattered most, not her pride or her anger or even her legal rights, but Lily's sense of security and trust in both her parents. Even if that meant facing the man who had planned to destroy her. Even if it meant finding a compromise she'd once thought impossible. The Portland courthouse loomed gray and imposing in the morning drizzle, its formal architecture a physical manifestation of the legal system's authority. Rose gripped Elena Chen's business card like a talisman as she navigated the security check, grateful that Lily was safely with Eleanor rather than witnessing this first confrontation. The emergency custody hearing had been scheduled for Judge Rollins's chambers rather than open court, a small mercy that at least kept the proceedings from becoming a public spectacle. As Rose entered the wood-paneled room, her eyes immediately found Malcolm, seated beside his attorney at a small conference table. He looked exactly as she remembered from the gallery, confident, composed, expensively attired in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. When he saw her, something flickered across his features, recognition, determination, and an emotion she couldn't quite identify. Not the cold calculation she'd expected, but something more complex. Ms. Walsh, Judge Rollins nodded as Rose took her seat across from Malcolm. And Mr. Thornton. Thank you both for your punctuality. Given the unusual circumstances of this case, I've reviewed the filings in detail before this hearing. I have several questions for both parties. What followed was an intensive, often uncomfortable examination of the past 5 years. Judge Rollins, a stern-faced woman with penetrating eyes and a no-nonsense manner, directed sharp questions at both Rose and Malcolm, cutting through evasions and legal posturing with surgical precision. Ms. Walsh, she addressed Rose directly. You removed your daughter from her home, assumed a false identity, and denied Mr. Thornton any knowledge of her whereabouts for 5 years. Please explain why I shouldn't consider this parental abduction. Rose took a deep breath, focusing on the facts rather than the emotion. Your Honor, I fled with Lily because I genuinely believed she was in danger. I overheard my then-husband and his business partner planning to frame me for corporate espionage and use the allegations to gain full custody of our daughter. They explicitly discussed using her as a business asset. Judge Rollins turned to Malcolm. Mr. Thornton, your response. Malcolm met the judge's gaze steadily. The conversation Ms. Walsh overheard was taken out of context. Yes, there was discussion of corporate espionage allegations, but they concerned a security breach my CFO believed Ms. Walsh might have unwittingly facilitated. The custody discussion was about protecting Nora during what would likely be a difficult investigation. A convenient interpretation, Judge Rollins observed. Do either of you have evidence supporting your version of events? This was the moment Elena had prepared her for. Rose nodded to her attorney, who presented the court with selections from Callum's flash drive, carefully chosen excerpts that demonstrated the planned frame-up without revealing Callum as the source. As you can see, Your Honor, Elena explained, these communications clearly show the fabrication of evidence against my client. They corroborate her reasonable fear that Mr. Thornton planned to use false allegations to separate her from her daughter. Malcolm's attorney, a polished woman in her 40s with the sharp demeanor of someone accustomed to winning, leaned forward. Your Honor, these isolated excerpts presented without context prove nothing except that Ms. Walsh had access to confidential company communications. What they don't explain is why, if she truly feared for her safety, she didn't seek legal protection instead of disappearing with Mr. Thornton's child. I believe Malcolm's resources would overwhelm any legal proceedings, Rose answered before the judge could pose the question. He controlled the company, the evidence, the narrative. And he had explicitly stated his intention to gain full custody by whatever means necessary. Judge Rollins turned back to Malcolm. Mr. Thornton, these allegations are serious. What is your current intention regarding custody of your daughter? Malcolm hesitated, his expression carefully controlled. Your Honor, I've spent 5 years searching for my child. 5 years wondering if she was safe, if she was happy, if she even remembered me. Now that I've found her, I want to be her father again, in whatever capacity best serves her well-being. His gaze shifted to Rose, something unreadable in his eyes. My primary concern is Lily's happiness and stability. I'm willing to work toward an arrangement that acknowledges the life she's built with her mother while allowing me to rebuild my relationship with her.